Okay, for 98, I will let you graph it, but you don't need to graph it to be able to answer the questions. But in this question, it says graph it, so I'll let you graph it. But I want to show you how you would do it if you weren't graphing it. So for A, it says reflect the triangle across the y-axis. So remember, let's just remember what's happening here. This is x, this is y. If I'm reflecting across the y-axis, if I have a point here, the y-coordinate, right, if this is x, y, right, and I'm reflecting it across the y-axis, this would be the new point, right, x prime, y prime, right? The only thing that changes is x. Y still seems the same. The only thing that happens to x is we're taking the opposite of x. If over here we had, let's take a point. Let's take z, right, negative 1, 4. This is negative 1, 4 for z, right? The only thing that happens is the new y is still 4, but the x is 1. So it's taking the opposite of the x value when you reflect across the y-axis. When you reflect across the x-axis, it's taking the opposite of the y-coordinate. So reflect the triangle across the y-axis. What are the new coordinates? The new coordinates are 1, 4, right? That's for part A. Okay, now B says take the original triangle, down 6 units. So let's think what this is. So this is for B. So x, y is going to get translated to, so let's see, down 6 units, that relates to the y coordinate, and right 3 units. So if I go right 3 units in the x direction, this one becomes x plus 3, and the y said down 6 units. Down 6 units means negative, so y minus 6. So here's the rule to translate the points. So now we can translate points. They want us to give the coordinates of point y. So point y was negative 2, 3, and now it's going to become negative 2 plus 3, and 3 minus 6, which is negative 2 plus 3 is 1, and 3 minus 6 is negative 3. So there's the new y. This is part B, right? Part B, right here. And the next one says dilate the original triangle by multiplying each coordinate by negative 1. So if you multiply each coordinate by negative 1, the size isn't going to change at all, right? It's just going to reflect it over both axes, right? Because if we already said that if you reflect across the y, it takes the opposite of the x, and if you reflect across the x, it takes the opposite of y. So they're telling us to multiply each coordinate by negative 1. So they're taking the opposite of the x and the y. So in this case, this is going to reflect it across the x and across the y. So in essence, they're rotating this whole triangle 180 degrees. And you would see that if you graphed it, but you should be able to visualize knowing how reflection across the x and the y changes the x and y coordinates. So for C, right, for C, we would say the size is the same, right, because they're multiplying by 1 or negative 1 is the same. But the triangle is rotated 180 degrees. And I would even accept that the triangle is reflected over the x and y axes, right? That shows a true understanding of what's actually happening.